Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today I'm going to answer a really common question that I get. This applies to almost every job, industry, background area, but it takes different forms and it comes from the perspective of why am I not getting a job, right? So everyone knows you send out resumes, cover letters, whatnot, you apply online, and then for some reason I'm not getting a job. Okay, you need to understand there are three basic steps for every interview process. Step one is going to be submitting resumes and writing your resume in your cover letter portion here, right? So you go online, you submit the resume. That's step one. Step two is you get a call from HR. HR interviews you, talks to you briefly. And then finally, step three is going to be talking to hiring managers. So again, this step can take multiple people, but it's really just one step, right? You're interviewing technical people here. So it's going to be the hiring manager that's actually the one hiring you, so the person you'll be working for. It can be other managers, it can be other colleagues that you could work for, but that's going to be step three here. You need to figure out which step you are failing out and then improve at that step. So let's say you send out a bunch of emails, right? And you send a bunch of resumes out online, you go through LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever, and you're just not getting any callbacks. Okay. You're stuck at step one. The most common problem here is step one. Your resume does not align with the jobs that you are applying for. So in quant finance here, the industry that I work in, I see this a lot. Somebody will have a background and they list it out on their resume and they write the resume up and it does not match the job postings. And in their mind, right, they think they're the same thing. These are easy skills, right? I should be getting callbacks left and right, okay? A lot of times the reason for this is that the person that's actually reviewing this and filtering this is going to be HR. HR is really nice, but they typically hire for every position under the sun. When you think about really large corporations, for example, HR has no idea what each and every job does. So they have a general idea, but they don't know, like, I don't know, that you need to learn to program in R, but programming in Python's not as helpful for this job, right? Or maybe you need to learn C, but not C++, or maybe they prefer C# because they run in a Windows atmosphere. Again, these are all going to be small, nuanced details specific to a job. Again, if you have the wrong things listed, HR is going to struggle to look at the job posting that the hiring manager wrote and actually looking at your resume and figuring out, do they really match or these seem kind of different, right? If you can't have a really clear, easy match, most likely you're not going to get callbacks here. One way of improving this is looking at job postings, looking at your resume, seeing if they match. Again, if they don't match, then you need to figure out, okay, what on that posting, what skills listed there do I have, and how do I convey them on my resume, okay? That's the biggest key here. This is the biggest challenge I think a lot of people face. Do not lie. Do not lie. You will get caught. I see this a lot. I've interviewed people that have listed things on their resume that are not true. When asked questions, it is frustrating. So just don't lie. But again, you can think about different scenarios, different stories on how you meet those qualifications. You also might be applying for the wrong jobs, right? You might have a background that does not match this other area. And if you don't, it's really, really hard breaking into a new industry unless you can show somehow that your skills overlap. For quant finance, this is common if you have like a physicist or a math PhD going into quant finance. Again, you need to show that you have a similar background here, even though your degree is differently labeled than quantitative finance. The second part here is going to be the HR interview. The best advice I can give you here, answer the questions clearly. So I typically like to give a yes or no, but then also give a short example to show how it works. So for example, they might ask, Dimitri, have you ever programmed in C#? And I would say, yes, I have programmed in C#. I worked on this project at, XYZ, or I worked in this class that I took in university, and we used C# and I built out, a program that sorted people by alphabetical name or something, right? Give a short example, but make sure they understand it is a yes or it is a no. Again, if you don't have it, don't lie, but you can also follow up with, no, I have not done that. However, I have worked in like this other language and we built similar projects. So I do have a really solid background in, fill in the gap here for your skill. But be honest and say no up front, but do give a little short explanation here. The most common reason people do not pass these for HR is they don't say clear yes and no kind of responses here. They typically go, oh yeah, I had this project, and they get rambling and they go on and on and on and on for like 5 minutes without breathing, kind of like what I do when I talk. And anyway, so they finish through this, and then at the end of it, then the HR person's thinking like, I don't want to sound stupid and I don't want to ask the question again, but it doesn't really sound like that giant long story and process was related to what we're doing. And it might be the most amazing project you've ever done, and it utilized that skill and it was required. But if you don't make it clear to HR, they're just going to pass and find someone else who's better at communicating, basically. So that's kind of the big failure I see with the second one. The third interview now is where you switch it up. So now when you have your third interview, you can give long, detailed descriptions and more information, because this hiring manager, if they're hiring you for these skills, they should know all about these skills, right? This is what they should be doing for a living. So in this third round here, if it's the hiring manager or other people in the company, they'll probably ask you an assortment of questions that are both technical, so specific to the job, as well as soft skills like how you work with people, difficult times you've had in your career, how you coped with them, how do you deal with difficult people, for example. Again, practicing and having good answers for these is crucial, but also just being able to give good, solid examples, answering detailed questions on these, really prepping for that interview part is key here. I see a lot of people prep for this, the final hiring manager interviews, and yet they don't kind of practice for HR and they don't write a good resume, and so you never really get to that stage here. Again, diagnosing where you were stuck at in the process will help you find a job much quicker. This also applies for internships as well, right? It has a similar hiring process and you can get stuck at any one of these points. Anyways, those are my tips and tricks. That's how I figure out where I'm at in this process. A little bonus tip here, interviewing is hard. It's hard for everybody, at least most people. It's hard for me. Make sure to practice interview. I know this is weird. I know this is not traditional here. So when I was in college, or actually graduate school here looking for a job, there was all these resources on campus. You could do fake mock interviews. I was too embarrassed to do them. I didn't do them. So instead, I interviewed at a bunch of different companies and I failed all these interviews because I didn't understand what HR was looking for. I didn't understand what the hiring manager was looking for. I sounded like a robot. I was nervous. I was sweating. I was on the phone, in-person interviews. I did not do well, okay? Practicing these interviews, even practicing talking about your projects and what you've done, so practice talking about what's on the resume, that goes a long ways because, yeah, you might have done something a year ago, 2 years ago, and it's hard to remember all the details. But as you're talking it through interview after interview and failing all of them, you'll remember all the details and you'll get better and better and better at it. But why fail all those interviews when you can just talk to family and friends or even university coaches or any sort of free resource where you can chat with someone about like a mock interview? This is the time to fail before you actually end up in front of someone who could pay you money and have a great job, and then you fail and don't get the job. So anyways, those are my tips and tricks. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time.